Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to DP Solutions and Arctic Wolf Network's detection and response of critical components of the cybersecurity journey. And the webinar is going to begin in just a few minutes. While people are sort of filtering in, why don't I go ahead and just bring up a few housekeeping items. As usual, everybody on the call has been on mute except for me and Jeff, because we're going to cut down on background noise. If you have any questions, make sure you use the little chat box in the client here, and you can ask us questions. We're going to make sure we have some time at the end of the webinar to take any questions you have about the content today. Before we get started, let me introduce Jeff. As you can tell, this is going to be a little bit different from most of our webinars in the sense that we're going to let Jeff do a lot of the talking today. He's a pre-sales systems engineer at Arctic Wolf Networks and brings 19 years of experience in security, enterprise backup, storage, and end-user computing to his role. He advocates for the customers committed to helping educate, solve, and architect solutions that improve customer security posture, and holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in Computer Information Systems from Bryant College in Rhode Island. Arctic Wolf is a valuable partner for DP Solutions. They provide something called Managed SOC, which is really a step up from the type of security that most of our clients are accustomed to. And so today, I'm looking at this as to be a really nice education session where people can understand a little bit more about beyond the typical IT security things like firewalls and antivirus and patching and stuff that most people are familiar with. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jeff take it from here. And thanks very much again for attending. I hope you guys enjoy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ben. Glad to be here and excited to talk with you all and answer any questions that you may have moving forward based on the content as well. So from an agenda perspective, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world, right? Some recent news, why it's happening, some challenges that, frankly, we all face, regardless of the size of the organization. What we see from an evolution in security perspective, and an introduction into our CyberSOC. And also tell you some war stories about some of the good, the bad, and the ugly that we've seen with customers, and some kind of leave you with some thoughts on keeping yourself safe moving forward from a business perspective, also from a personal perspective. So without further ado, let's get out of the way. Hackers are real. There's a real threat out in the landscape. As you've seen in the news, it's things from all kinds of businesses going out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack, to settlements on breached information. It's a massive exploitations taking place in the market. I'm sure everyone remembers hearing all the news and the hubbub about Meltdown and Spectre over the past few months. And then let's not forget, there's even things as crazy as someone stumbling across and realizing that there's tons of sensitive information out there, including where some of our troops are running in the middle of the desert because of their Fitbits. Zero-day attacks popping up day in and day out, it feels like. And government websites, delivered to websites being used to deliver cryptocurrency mining code even. The vulnerabilities and the threats are not just in one location, they're everywhere. They're quite simply overwhelming. And as we've all known, thanks to Equifax, the breach is even worse than initially advertised. And we've seen that evolve over time, where their initial response was obviously not stellar and not in a true timely fashion, but then even that, the accuracy of it has been questioned over time. So these threats are coming at us from every angle, and it's natural to feel kind of in this sense of, what do I do about it? Right? What can I do? How can I better protect myself? How can I better protect my organization as well? And it's really an artifact, or not really an artifact, more of an outcome based on some things that we see. Think about just the amount of devices. We're living in a more connected world day in and day out. You know, in the 70s, there's 23 secure military mainframes out there. That was computing in the world, right? There were these massive machines taking up rooms, right? Then we go ahead and the PC comes around, 10,000 connected hosts out there. We see in the 90s, 1 million personal computers. Moving to the 2010s, 1 billion mobile devices. We've all seen it. You know, in the 90s, no one had a smartphone. They didn't exist, right? Now we have more and more mobile devices, whether it be from, you know, autonomous cars now. And we see this in the news constantly. In 2020, though, it's estimated that 50 billion connected devices will be out there. We're at an inflection point of complete explosion of information and of data. I actually, even last night, went through, and I'm sure all of you are following this information about Facebook and the leaking of the information. I was actually astonished last night in 2 different ways. I downloaded my Facebook data, and I looked at it, and I was astonished to see who actually supposedly had my contact information according to Facebook. People that I don't ever remember interacting with, and frankly, when I had to Google some of these businesses and even see what they were about, and frankly, I have no interest in their products whatsoever. Their analytics were a bit off if they wanted to suggest me as a person to purchase their services. I'm not a nurse. I'm a techie. I wouldn't be buying nursing scrubs, but apparently an organization that sells nursing scrubs had my contact information. To my pleasure, though, when I looked at what contact information they had, it was essentially null. I don't reveal much contact information for myself on Facebook. The point being, there is data everywhere. And you need to go under the assumption that that data is at risk. And, you know, things used to travel at a much smaller speed, right? Those days of sneaker net are gone, right? Yeah, there are USB thumb drives, but data moves so much faster now. And so you need to go ahead and act with caution. And you're not alone, right? All companies face the same challenges, regardless of size. Yeah, they may have different capabilities. They may have different budgets and resources available to them. But whether you're a Bank of America, a small law firm, a small manufacturer, you're going to be facing some of the same challenges. There's permutations in those, but we're all faced with social engineering. You know, advanced persistent threats, drive-by attacks, insider threat, misconfigurations simply by human error. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes. There's so much noise and not enough people. With all the different layers in security, and we highly recommend defense in depth. We would recommend making sure you have proper antivirus, proper firewalls, so on and so forth, all the different layers that you think of when you come to defense, right? They're all going to be there. But the problem is each of them generates noise. They all generate log streams. They all generate alerts. No one has the time to manually comb through every single log item that's coming from their firewall, from the antivirus, and do that in a manual basis. And then try to manually cross-correlate so you can see what's really real, right? The other problem is, and I'm sure you're aware, actually I subscribed to an article or a subscription service really for security insight. It's called Dark Reading. And one of the things that I saw recently was back in, I think, the January timeframe, the number one thing that CISOs are concerned about isn't necessarily the breach right now, isn't necessarily about data loss. What they're concerned about is the sheer lack of talent out in the market space. If you're a security analyst, it's a great place to be working right now. You're in demand. There's an endless supply of jobs, and they're jumping from job to job, driving up the price and the salary, the average salary for the security analyst. So this combination of too much noise and not enough people to handle it is a real perplexing problem for most. Some do try to do it yourself. There are some open source tools out there. They even maybe go ahead and buy a tool like a Siem that they could use to go ahead and bring information in and do some cross-correlation alerting and centralized logging and reporting. But then when it comes to the actual monitoring of it, whether you're putting that Siem in place, you're putting an intrusion detection or an intrusion prevention system in, all those things become somewhat complex and cumbersome and expensive to maintain. Buying the tool alone doesn't do it. You also need to have the people, the process, as well as the technology to really be successful in detection and response. So how do we increase our security posture? Do we do it by implementing a SOC? Do we do more of the same? Do we just implement more perimeter tools, put up more layers of defense, hope that those security tools are configured properly, that the bad guys aren't faster than the good guys, and that no one gets past? Or do we wait for something like Watson and artificial intelligence and general intelligence to go ahead and solve security for everyone? We see it as an evolution. People start out often, when they start an organization, they have basic passwords, AD, patch management, they have some backups. Their perimeter, their firewalls, spam, web filters, web application firewalls, proxies, endpoint, whether it be a next-gen AV or a traditional AV solution, DLP solutions, SSL inspection, anti-DDoS, intrusion protection, cloud access security brokers, a CASB. There's various different levels of defense in depth. However, though, there is also continuing on that spectrum, going up into detection and response. It is that advanced and proactive log aggregation and correlation, the human and threat intelligence, and the incident detection and response capabilities. And also moving into more containment and remediation as well. Intrusion containment, what do you do when something's detected? How do you remediate it? And how do you update your policies internally accordingly? Where most companies are at today, they're somewhere in that spectrum between basic, perimeter, and defense in depth. Not everyone has every single one of those technologies, but there is some combination of those. Where most people want to get today is they want to get to the end of the spectrum, but there is this gigantic gap that's associated with it. And this is where Arctic Wolf Networks, with our fantastic partners like DP Solutions, comes to play. Right? This is where we operate in. We help bridge that gap, make what was traditionally unattainable and unaffordable something that's within everyone's reach. But what about AI? AI is important. I don't want to dismiss this, but AI alone can't solve the problem. We fundamentally at Arctic Wolf believe in the combination of man and machine. AI does a tremendous job for us. We utilize it, but we use it combined with our humans to go ahead and drive the highest degree of accuracy and effectiveness to helping protecting folks. So from a compliance perspective, the National Institute of Standards, NIST, has come out with some many policies and many procedures for people to follow and recommendations. We subscribe to the NIST framework. We suggest many of our customers to go ahead and do so. And we, along with DP Solutions, can help drive you towards those the NIST framework. NIST fundamentally broke it down into in a broad stroke, a 5-step approach. First, you need to identify the assets that need protection. 2, you need to further protect them. But then when all else goes wrong, you need to be able to detect things going wrong and respond to them, and then have the ability to recover. So where our managed SOC or our CyberSOC comes into play is we help with the detect and the respond. That requires humans. Ponemon did a study, and actually they came out with 53% cost per incident is spent on detection and response, and 240 days to detect a security incident after it happened. Nearly a year. That's what, like 2/3 of a year gone by before something's even realized. So on average, what someone's finding today is from what, last August, September timeframe? Doing rough math. That's a long time for something to be sitting there persistent and prevalent on the network. And then 46 days, once you find that, it's still going to take you a month and a half to go ahead and deal with it. We're all about eliminating that dwell time, finding things in near real time, alerting to them, and with our partners working to go ahead and remediate those issues. So SOC as a service is what we deliver. It's a comprehensive solution based with a unified security and centralized view. We want to get insight into the full environment. We want the information from all the various log sources that you have. We want to get the most holistic view into the environment we can. It is 24/7 monitoring. So again, when we came back to the kind of the problems we see out in the market, people don't have the staff to operate. Many times, people are being told to do more with less, wear many hats, run a lean shop, term it however you want. There just simply isn't enough time and people to service the amount of time in the day, right? You're not staffing 24/7 with people sitting there watching alerts. So we've delivered 24/7 monitoring focused on managed detection and response. So that's based on all the security events, which is different than a NOC, right? A network operations center, which is going to be focused on more performance of switches. There's a hard drive about to fail, things like that. We're alerting to the security events. That's what we're singularly focused on. And then we also wanted to deliver this with a predictable pricing model as well. That's important. There's a lot of solutions out there that as you look at the market, you'll find a lot of them will go ahead and price off of things that are, well, we would say unquantifiable. How many events per second you have? I would gather that probably no one on this call knows exactly how many events per second they're seeing, how much log volume in a given day they're actually generating. Or if they were to subscribe to a service, how many calls they would be placing, or how many incidents they would have. All those things are unquantifiable. So we wanted to deliver a simple, predictable pricing model. We have an efforts-based model based on attack surface. The way we estimate that is through the number of humans you have, the number of users that are actually working in the environment and generating potential investigations. So those knowledge workers. We also take into account the number of servers in your environment. We do place hardware sensors in the environment to gather traffic information about the data and the traffic going in and out of your network. So based on those as well. And then also any SaaS applications that you may be using. So if you happen to be an Office 365, a G Suite user, something along those lines. Things that are predictable. You kind of know where those are going to fall, and that gives you a predictable monthly cost moving forward. From a capabilities perspective, threat management is key to us. Time matters. Your time matters. Time when something is discovered matters. We want to go ahead and address this very efficiently. And when we developed our solution, we went ahead and developed it based on the concept of low noise and high signal. So what do I mean by that? We wouldn't be a very effective solution if we were coming to our partners and telling them constantly, there's a alert here, go look into it. And then there's a false positive. And if we keep getting false positives over and over and over again, we end up seeing this sense of almost like the boy who cried wolf syndrome, right? You tell me once and it's not true. You tell me twice and it's not true. You tell me 3 times and it's not true. 4th time, am I really going to believe you? Right? It lowers the sensitivity and the priority. So we want to come to our partners and to our customers with only the true incidents. And those true incidents, we want to be able to deliver the actual security intelligence and the remediation steps. And then our partners can go help remediate those incidents. With that, in 2016 and 2017, Arctic Wolf did a fantastic job and delivered less than 1% false positive rate to our customer base, both in 2016 and 2017. That's something we're really proud of ourselves on. When we do that threat management, we're inherently going to be reducing cyber risk. That's going to be an outcome, right? When we're dealing with things proactively and you're not having threats sitting there persistent and pervasive on your network, that's a good thing when we're getting rid of those. However, though, we combined with DP Solutions are going to be providing you proactive advice. And that proactive advice will help drive you towards a framework like the NIST framework and increase your security posture over time. We also came at this from a unified security approach. We could have said, go buy a XYZ SIM and then we'll come and manage it. There's a problem with that, though. We wouldn't be in control of our own fate and be able to help our customers very well. We wanted to be in control, so we developed our entire solution, our entire threat management platform ourselves. We own and operate it. We wanted to be able to deliver this as a simple operational cost. So we deliver the people, the process, and the technology to you. And lastly, security operations effectiveness. We're there as the backstop. Think of us as when all else fails. It's not a matter of if, but when things fail. It could be because the bad guys are simply faster than the good guys. It could be because your user did something that they shouldn't have. Let's all be honest, we have those users. And also, it could be just a simple misconfiguration. Something was changed, or an update presented a new vulnerability, something of those extents. Things beyond our control often. We see those things, and then we can go ahead and help. An example, and this kind of gets into some of the war stories in a little bit that I'll go through. An example we had is we had a regional hospital. We were working with a partner, and the partner had deployed those sensors, and we had just gotten in. It was a matter of minutes in, and we started seeing for this regional hospital inbound traffic. That inbound traffic was RDP traffic, and it was coming from a foreign location. So we reached out to the partner that was installing, and we had a conversation. They talked to their customer. Clearly, this was not normal traffic. They had a specific segment for their IT group, and they would only allow that remote desktop protocol to be from their IT group. No one should be accessing the servers except for them. However, that wasn't a case. In this instance, the partner wasn't the person that was actually managing the firewalls for them. The customer managed their own firewalls. It wasn't part of the partner's engagement with them. We asked them for the logs and the configuration. We hadn't even gotten them yet. When we got them, we realized that their network admin 2.5 months prior had put what's called an any rule in. Basically said anyone can talk to anyone over any port, essentially disabling their firewall for 2.5 months. They were actively under attack and had absolutely no idea on a regular basis. We saw that, we were able to help, and the partner helped guide them on how to properly remediate that and move forward. From an architecture perspective, we have a really clean architecture. It's pretty simple. I mentioned earlier sensors. They go at the ingress-egress points of the network. They're going to go where you talk to the internet. So if you have, for example, a 5-office location, and each of those offices goes ahead, and when you go to, say, google.com, you're going to go do a web query. When you go to do that, it goes directly out the connection there. Then that's an ingress-egress point, and we would be putting sensors at that location. If you had a different scenario where you had 5 offices, but no matter what you're doing, the traffic goes through the centralized location and then out a single connection, that one location is the ingress and egress point, and that's where we would be putting the sensor.
Yeah.
So the sensors are...
Jeff, if you don't mind me interrupting real quick,
sure.
I would just say in general, too, with this sort of thing, that deploying a managed SOC like this is really a discussion. So if you were to do something like this would definitely be a broad conversation. We would go through where we're looking to capture information from and make sure we hit all those points. So for a lot of the people on the call, I would imagine that this is going to be a really consultative process. So don't dwell too much about where sensors and such are. We'll work with you on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a process.
Yeah.
So those sensors, additionally, they're kind of like a multi-function device. They're going to be an intrusion detection system, so they'll generate alerts. We're going to be being a flow aggregator and creator, creating metadata about traffic we see going in and out of the environment. It's going to be a log aggregator, so that's going to be that centralized point to get all the information from your switches, from your firewalls, from your name services like Active Directory, from your antivirus, if I didn't say that already. All those various things that you have, the layers in defense, that all gets pointed to the sensor. And then if put in place, it can also be a human-assisted IPS, meaning that we can put a block in when we have a critical event and we've agreed to that blocking action. All that information, so we're not taking your actual data, we're taking metadata about the packets as well as the log entries that you send to us. We're going to be compressing them, encrypting them for security, sending over an encrypted tunnel, so essentially doubly encrypted in transit. They then land in our threat management platform, which resides here in the US within AWS. And there it rests in encrypted form as well. So your data is most certainly secure and isolated. That threat management platform is also where we can directly interact with various cloud providers. A few are up here on the screen. It's not an all-inclusive list. Okta, Cylance, Box, Salesforce, G Suite, Office 365, ServiceNow, even infrastructure as a service platforms like Azure or AWS. So we have direct integrations with those that we can help out with as well and get the information. The point being is bring it into a holistic view. That way we can see what happens. We can cross-correlate something that happens on-premise with something that happens in the cloud. So for example, maybe someone gets phished. Locally, someone goes ahead and gets an email and they click on it. Unbeknownst to them, it doesn't get caught. They go ahead and they put their credentials in. That's a critical alert. We're going to be going ahead and looking at that with a high degree of sensitivity. On top of that, maybe you're using Office 365, for example. We then can pivot into that data source and see that the person did what we would call an impossible travel or a geodisparate IP login. They're logged in here in the US and all of a sudden magically around the globe, they're logged in somewhere else. That's an unlikely thing. It's a red alert for us essentially. We're looking into that. On top of that, we could also see information like maybe they went ahead and created rules. That person that was logging in from around the globe set up rules to delete items, right? And so any auto reply, any kind of email back to them. So if someone gets what they're sending out, they say, hey, this looks fishy, and they email back, go straight to deleted items. So the person that they have infiltrated doesn't have any knowledge that this is even happening. And then if they even had OneDrive, maybe they went ahead and started to go ahead and exfiltrate data and share that data out, right? We would be able to see that as well. So a very holistic view into the environment so we can have the complete scope of what's going on. We also, as part of this service, we provide an external vulnerability scan on a monthly basis. So that also gets initiated from our threat management platform as well. So a pretty clean architecture. Local stuff gathered by the sensor, cloud stuff directly ingested from our cloud, everything brought together. That's where the Concierge Security Engineer is going to go ahead and work, and our security analysts work to drive out the noise. Our AI will be going through hunting for threats as well as reducing noise, coming to the true instance, and then working with our partners to help remediate those for you. So some examples. Let's talk about some of the war stories. These tend to be a little bit more fun, some scary, some not as scary. But they're all eye-opening. And these are real world scenarios that we've gone ahead and helped people with. And everything's anonymized. It has to be. We're a security company. We don't share who our customers are and things like that unless they explicitly want to do a case study with us and all that kind of stuff and share their name. But in this instance, we had a supply chain management company, right? The business risk is they were concerned about 24/7 uptime on logistics. Unfortunately for them, ransomware is delivered through emails and often a popular attack vector, right? The alerts were generated by a rule on our sensor, so our sensor detected that. We also saw that ransomware communicated with their CNC, the command and control. That's where they do their exchange of encryption keys as these bad guys are trying to then hold the only key to your data, right? So this is where they do that exchange, right? And our CSE observed the malicious traffic coming from the laptop. The CSE, along with our partner, alerted the customer, right, that it was being delivered, and they were able to prevent the attack from spreading to other laptops and servers. They were able to go to the email and actually remove that email from all the other people, as well as put a block in place to prevent devices from talking to that command control. So while we may not be blocking the very first instance, again, as Ponemon had stated, that could have gone a long time or could have spread even wider. We're catching things in near real time, alerting to them and helping you deal with them in a very timely fashion so things don't get bad, right? They don't go to ugly. Another example, right, is an insider threat. Was it a false positive? Maybe not. The business risk of corporate infrastructure used for nefarious activities. This war story, ransomware was detected. However, it was a Windows-only variant, and the device was alerting was a Linux device. So obviously, it makes us scratch our head, right? How would this Windows variant be working on a Linux box? We escalated the incident to the customer and did some additional remote forensics on the device. And what they were doing is they were actually leveraging Kali Linux. And an employee at the remote location was leveraging Kali Linux to build ransomware as a service packages and try to distribute using the corporate infrastructure. So this is a real bad guy, right? This is the kind of people that you question why they are around and why they do the things they do. So in two facts, he was causing harm to other people, but also he was doing it on the company's dime and illegally using their resources. So obviously a real bad situation. We also have some times where people just get, let's just call it dumb lucky. Some things happen, and this story will kind of, it makes my skin crawl a little bit given the sensitivity of the data. In this instance, a web server was compromised, but it could have been so much worse than it was. They truly were lucky. During an installation and onboarding, we noticed DNSE lookups that were going to a resource called Blizzard Battle.net. And that kind of made us scratch our heads. We're like, why is this happening? We did further forensics on the web server logs and identified a remote access Trojan existed on that device. So again, we're simply just onboarding. This stuff was already there. It's prevalent on the network. We're now seeing it. The actor was actually located in China and installed a private World of Warcraft server. Essentially, there's probably some kid just geeking out, found a vulnerability server, and decided that's all they were going to do. However, though, the scary part, this web server that was compromised and had a remote Trojan on it, right, was the front end to their EMR system, their electronic medical record. If this kid had known what he was on and not just been trying, and I say kid, I assume it's a kid, it could have been an adult. This person, right, if they actually had known the treasure trove that they were on and started to steal that data, oh my Lord, it would have been so much worse for this organization. So they truly were lucky, and we were able to help guide them on how to shut that down. This one comes to where procedures aren't always up to snuff, right? And this comes to sometimes you need to rethink how you do things and make sure you have proper controls in place. This was unauthorized access to financial data. So an IT staff at one of our customers, they had a rotation involving adding and removing usernames from a help desk alias. So that was a common thing. So as they rotated people through the help desk, they added them and they removed them. A hacker used multiple brute force attempts to log in using a stale account in the help desk alias. So they had found an account and they went ahead and successfully penetrated. And brute force, a lot of people think of brute force as this really hard thing. Brute force comes in a couple different flavors. It can be a slow burn, where they're trying to stay under the radar and not lock out the account and slowly trickling, right? They can also try things like what they call spray and pray, where they take a password and try it against every single account in the environment until they get a password that works, right? So there's different ways that they can attack. We noticed multiple failed logins followed by a successful login over a span of 2 days. So this was a slow burn type attack. The customer did not catch the brute force since it was below the thresholds of their failed logins a day, right? They were looking for those, but you know, they didn't hit that threshold, so it didn't alert them internally. The CSE, along with our partner, went ahead and we informed the IT manager, and they were able to disable the stale account. Now, obviously, they had a stale account. They shouldn't have had a stale account, so that also begs some conversation around their policies and how they could improve those around their account management as well. So there's a lot of things out there, out in the wild. I think I personally took a huge lesson from the Equifax breach. I'm starting to kind of think about my presence on the internet personally as well. The things that you should do personally are also some of the things that you should be doing from an organization perspective, right? You limit access to your data, right? You make sure things are closed down properly. You make sure that your passwords are secure. Having password 123 doesn't fly anymore, right? So we do see a lot of organizations going ahead, moving towards a single sign-on and multi-factor, or using a password manager as well. So the user doesn't even have to worry about remembering the password, right? They can go ahead and utilize a tool like that. But you can even use these in your personal life, right? Also for your users, having them use VPN is often a smart thing to do, right? Making sure their traffic, so when they are out in the wild and they're at that Starbucks working, trying to be more productive for you, they're not sitting there browsing over an open internet connection. All these things can help keep you safe, right? Whether it be personally or whether it be professionally. You need to practice layers of defense. You also need to be aware. It's a good old see something, say something, right? That's our job. We're watching over the environments so we can raise the important things up to the top and make sure our customers and our partners are kept safe. So be vigilant, right? Make sure that you're protecting yourself, right? Here are some examples. I'm not going to go through each one of them. We can make sure that you get the actual details here. I'm sure many of you have already gone through it from the Equifax breach, but you want to make sure that your data is protected. Make sure that you're secured and you know what's going on. You know, in the form of managed detection and response for humans, right? For normal people, for me, I use a service that monitors my social security number and my vital records. That way I'm alerted if someone's trying to take a credit card out in my name, right? Yeah. It is just that. You can't go through life blindly.
For those of you who've attended webinars in the past, you know, one of the things I talk about a lot is, you know, we want to avoid the behavioral pratfalls that put us in a situation where we have to worry about managed SOCs and stuff in the first place. Of course, we need these security tools. Of course, we have to have them. They're important. They matter. But you know, it's like I always say it's like seatbelts on a car or a flu shot. It's, you know, you don't put a seatbelt on because you want to get into a car accident and you say, why the seatbelt? So who cares? Or you don't get a flu shot and then go around shaking everybody coughing because it's just not good behavior. And so you want to kind of take a similar approach to cybersecurity. You know, services like Arctic Wolf are great once we're in the midst of a attack, but at the same time, we want to be vigilant to avoid those sorts of things in the first place.
Absolutely. So with that, we got some time for questions here. Want to make sure we left ample time.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have any questions. I don't have the question panel up here.
I've got the questions on my end. Before we start with the questions, and we'll give people an opportunity to maybe throw a few more questions into the chat. But you know, I do want to say thanks for everybody attending. If you want to follow up, you can reach out to either of us. We'll leave this splash screen up here a little bit, and you can follow up with me or check us out on our website, etc. We can talk with you more about this and other security concerns. I know oftentimes we do these webinars, and sometimes the follow-ups are about things that are peripheral to this stuff, and that's okay too. So let me ask you a few questions we have here. Could you talk about, Jeff, how during the midst of, let's say, a cybersecurity incident where sort of Arctic Wolf snaps into action, how would you interface with the client or someone like DP Solution to act on behalf of the client when it comes to IT support? Can you elaborate just a bit about the big picture process so that people on the call understand how that might work?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, like I mentioned before, low noise, high signal. So we're going to be coming with the true incidents. And when we engage, we want to have it dealt with the most highest degree of alertness, right? We want to make sure that people are working timely and working towards a close. Think of Arctic Wolf in our initial. So we're going to do the triage on it. We're going to identify, you know, where it came from, what's patient 0, what was affected, what needs to be done about it, and what can be done about it in the future. So we'll work with our customer or our partner. And what we will do is we'll act if you want to bring a a sports analogy to it, think of us as the offensive coordinator. We're not necessarily running the plays. We're there to support and help. And if it's something truly horrific, we can even open up a war room and get people on the phone and work through things live. But typically, it's going to be us reaching out with a phone call in a critical event, telling them, listen, this is what just happened. We're also raising a ticket, obviously, but this is what's happened. And this is what you need to go ahead and do about it now. So the fantastic thing about working with folks like DP Solutions is that helps speed up the remediation as well, as they have a lot of relationships and in-depth knowledge over those environments and can help expedite the remediation process as well.
Yeah, to give a little perspective on our end too, you know, think of how cyber security incidents happen as it pertains to things like ransomware. You know, oftentimes for clients who don't have any kind of SOC solution, it's a very reactive process. Is that someone notices in the middle of an attack on the end user's end, and by then, you know, a lot of the things that Arctic Wolf, you know, that they may have detected have already been in place. And then from a remediation standpoint, we're sort of reacting to what we see at the time, and we're not going through a real process. The beauty of our clients that we work with that have Arctic Wolf is we get clued into the issue and we're right into the remediation part. Arctic Wolf doesn't go into the servers and start changing things or anything like that, or make any configuration adjustments or anything like that. But they put us on the path so that we know how to respond to this incident specifically. That kind of goes into another question we have here. I want to talk for a second about like forensics and follow-up and post-incident, et cetera. You know, a major incident happens. You know, we've talked a lot today about remediation and detection, but let's talk about, you know, after the incident. It's very important for anyone's incident response plan to think about, you know, we don't want these incidents to happen again. So can you talk just a little bit high level, obviously, because it's hard to get too comprehensive about this, how we can use this information after an incident to sort of bolster our defenses even more, or point out to someone what happened or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we have the information, I kind of gave an example of it in the presentation. If we take that phishing example, for example, as the example, right, we're going to be able to see holistically the attack. Right? We're going to see where it started, how it originated, and even in some of those instances, we were to tell them, this is the email, this is what it came from, right? And be able to provide the view as to, one, how it started, two, how it moved through the network, right? How did it move laterally in the environment, right? And then three, what the behavior was. Sometimes the behavior of an incident isn't necessarily the first thing. It's the secondary thing. That's truly the damaging one. A lot of people, when they go for an attack, we've seen malware where the malware's job is to download another malware and do it more discreetly and at a later time, right? So seeing those subsequent events and tying that all together to get a holistic view as to what truly happened. And then once you understand what happened, then that's where you can start using as the foundation of where could we have done better, right? Where could we have had a better defense? Where could there be more education in general, right? But obviously specifically towards the incident, right? Where, you know, maybe it is a case of that person that got phished, they didn't have two-factor authentication, and having two-factor authentication could potentially help alleviate some of that risk, right? So having those conversations about how do you then move forward and bolster your security posture, right? And that's what we were kind of talking about when I said that our threat management is going to inherently reduce risk because we're going to prevent things from getting worse, right? But also it's about being proactive. You need to take that and then pivot into a proactive approach. How do I improve? How do I make it so this is not going to happen in the future, or at least be incredibly less likely to be happening in the future?
And in general, we want to have an assessment process in its entirety. You know, our Arctic Wolf is very good at identifying attacks that are in place, but when we're talking about measuring a risk, you know, what does it mean? You know, Arctic Wolf could take two specific incidents that they track, and the way it matters to an end user could vary simply based on the organization and what assets they control in that environment, the same exact incident. So I would say that the first thing that this is really a process is that you go from initial assessment where you evaluate a system and what assets need to be protected and how and in what manner, then into the ongoing maintenance and monitoring, the things that a lot of our clients currently do, like patch management, but added on things like SOC and other security tools. And then sort of post-remediation from an incident leads back into that assessment process. So we're going back and we're saying, okay, we have new information, we have new assessment analysis, things to go off of. How do we change our posture? And we want to be, where we want to be operating is really on that sort of, that marginal area where it's more, we're making tweaks to our process and we're improving things that were already pretty good to begin with.
Mm.
So,
absolutely. And that speaks to the NIST framework, right? When we do that, right, when we're working in DP Solutions is working with you on that, right? It's that feedback. The majority of what we do is in the detect and response, but obviously there is that identification, the protection, and the additional recovery that happens outside, but we're advising on that as well and working with DP Solutions to go ahead and provide that. So kind of putting it in the terms of the NIST framework, that's exactly what, you know, Ben was talking about, is sometimes you got to go back and obviously you want to identify and protect up front, but sometimes there is some re-identification and reassessment of the protection on an ongoing basis as well.
The last question I have here, unless we get another one in, really this is a question more about, you know, limitations, et cetera. So are there things, pardon me, are there things that Arctic Wolf can't capture in terms of systems that don't talk nicely with it, firewalls or servers or different logging systems or, you know, you get what I'm saying? You know, are we going to run into a problem in an environment deploying this that because I'm a client and I have this weird thing that I'm not going to be able to gather information? Could you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. For the most part, Arctic Wolf plays a very light touch as far as hard and fast support. Generally on-premise, anything that can syslog, we'll take. I haven't heard of or seen of a firewall that we haven't supported. If it's something that new and it's a new log source for us, as long as it can be syslogged to us, then in that instance, the CSE works to go ahead and grab the security intelligence out of it. Versus if you're doing a do-it-yourself, you have to go and do all that parsing, that building. When it comes to cloud services, some of them provide syslog output, which is just a communication path for sending logs. If they do that, then that's very easy for us. If it's API integration only, then it's just a matter, we do have a support list of what we have, and then we do have a roadmap of what we're building towards. So there is the chance that there may be a cloud platform yet that we haven't yet supported, but we are continually evolving that list as well. But pretty much anything on site, or even if it's in the cloud, if it can get syslogged, we gladly support it.
Speaking to that
Our
point,
goal is to get them all.
Right. Speaking to that point, and the thing I sort of interrupted Jeff with earlier, you know, in my experience working with Arctic Wolf, and again, this is about, you know, engineering and planning things out beforehand. There really is a discovery session where we're going through and talking about the things we need to capture, and we haven't had a situation yet where we had a client where we could not find a way to engineer or incorporate this kind of solution in a way that meets the standard necessary. So I would say that, as always with end users, what I always say is, you know, focus on your needs, focus on why we're doing this, what's important, and what we're looking to accomplish first, and then let, you know, techie nerds like me go in and work with guys like Jeff who can figure out how this deploys and where it fits in on the rest of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal, again, is to be as holistic as possible and gain as much insight. That provides the best coverage and the highest degree of accuracy when doing that cross-correlation and determining what's real.
Right.
So we want to go ahead and try to be as open as we can. So we have a very open stance, is I guess the best word for it.
one of the reasons we started working with Arctic Wolf in the first place was that when we've been making a big push to have more proactive security tools, and the beauty of Arctic Wolf was in its flexibility and things like that, and knowing that we could put this with a client and get the kind of service we need and deliver it in such a way that would be accessible without making significant compromises. And so it's one of the reasons it really draws us to them. So.
Excellent.
Anyway, I think that's all we have for questions. So I'm going to wrap it up. We are going to have a recording of the presentation emailed out a little bit later today. As I said earlier, if you guys have any questions at all, you can feel free to reach out to your DPS representative, myself, anything with the contact information below, and we're happy to chat with you more about this. We're going to have, as usual, another webinar next month in April, and more details will be going out about that soon, so make sure you keep an eye on your email and such. And if there's ever anything you guys want to hear in terms of content, we're always trying to present a variety of different educational topics for our clients and other interested parties, just to we really do believe in end user awareness and training and bringing more information to people so they can make decisions in a thoughtful way. So anyway, that's all we have today. Thank you again very much for attending, and I hope to hear from you all again real soon. Bye-bye.